Good morning if you're in the UK. If you're in Australia, good afternoon. Weekend for everybody. Some have already started. I can hear those the titties opening at the moment. And have a great weekend, but drive carefully. And for those in the UK, you have to wait for a titch. Although I would imagine one of our panellists probably hasn't. Basil is probably getting ready for the racing carnival. And I can hear those champagne bottles popping in the background as I talk. Now, Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu have opened Pandora's box. Despite American military dominance, Iran has done significant damage to America, Israel, and its regional neighbours. Damage to oil and gas facilities and the closure of the Strait of Hormuz has sent shockwaves throughout OPEC and the entire global economy. Think about it. Not a good move, I would think. Despite the decapitation of Iran's entire leadership last week, the election of a new supreme leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, looks likely. And I probably got the name wrong, and I'll be pulled up very shortly on that. Now, whether the second son of the assassinated Ali Khamenei is a hardliner, and whether the country and region becomes more unstable under his leadership is unknown. His rapid and apparently smooth election sends a powerful signal of continuity, defying the rationale for last week's strike. As the war continues, will America's Arab partners view it in a different light? Can America repair its standing amongst its allies and trading partners? Can it find an off-ramp? Has Israel finally overplayed its hand? Perhaps the situation 1 week ago was about as good as it got for everyone. Our panellists today are Basil Valentine, broadcaster and journalist, Hani Duik, former humanitarian worker, and Dr. Frank Romano, author and Middle East analyst. I'm going to try and bring them in here. I have not set this up properly, I think, and I was dead right. So we go over to here, and I press this now, and there we are. Look at that. See, almost had the whole show organised. First of all, Basil, thank you for joining us. Can you tell me what's your views? Where are we at the moment?
We're in a nightmarish situation, Mike, because a lot of the rhetoric coming out of the United States and Israel is that they're engaged in some kind of religious war and that we're heading towards the end times. An American commander was quoted telling NCOs this week that Donald Trump had been anointed by God to light the blue touch paper that would bring about Armageddon and the second coming of Jesus Christ. It's really extraordinary stuff. Meanwhile, Israelis launched the war a couple of days before Purim, an event recorded in the largely fictitious book of Esther, which describes the slaughter of 75,000 Persians 2,000 or 3,000 years ago. So the United States and Israeli position isn't simply irrational, it's borderline insane. And the result is mass casualties in Iran itself. And now, in spite of the censorship, from what we can see, tremendous destruction being done to Tel Aviv, as well as the total obliteration of extremely expensive American military assets dotted around the Persian Gulf, in the Emirates and Qatar and Bahrain, Saudi, places like that, where their billion-dollar radar systems have been completely destroyed. As for the Iranians, this is an existential threat. There's no return to normal. There's no back to the negotiating table. They were at the negotiating table when they were preemptively and illegally attacked. So it's now a case of either Iran is completely destroyed, or the Americans and Israelis not only have to stop their indiscriminate bombing, but are also forced to reevaluate their whole presence and situation in West Asia.
Hani, what's your views at the moment? Just a quick summary on what you see and where you think this may be heading.
Hello, everyone. I totally agree with Mr. Basil, and that the situation, even though it's a bit blurry, because no one can predict what will happen in few hours, nevertheless, this illegal war that was put on Iran, even though that they were sitting on the negotiating table to look at their nuclear program. Nevertheless, this war, we all know it's not America behind it. It's the Israeli government, Netanyahu in particular. They are looking to expand their borders. They talk about Greater Israel from the Nile to the Euphrates. They don't want any threats from Iran, because Iran is the only country at the moment who can um, who's considered as a threat to Israel. All the Gulf countries now, they are in a situation where, right, if Iran falls, that will create chaos in the region, and that's not in the interest of Gulf countries. Yet at the same time, they cannot but to be in alliance with the US. So the situation is very, very complicated. According to some analysts, this will take few weeks, maybe 3 to 4 weeks, maybe more. But at the same time, let's not forget that Iran is not Iraq, is not Afghanistan. Iran has such a sophisticated system, sophisticated population. They have strong military army. So it's not going to be as easy as the Americans or the Israelis thought. Also, the dangerous thing is that so far, Trump and his administration have no plan on what's coming next, and that shows that it's not an American war. It's basically an Israeli war performed by the U.S.
And Frank, what are your views? Because I mean, you probably know this a lot more intimately than most people would know. Tell me the feeling throughout the Middle East, and the where you see the land lying with the this, and it is an illegal war at the moment. It was quite illegal what Israel and the US did. Where do you see it heading? You probably need Frank again to turn that microphone on.
Yes, I have to agree with Hani and Basil. We're really headed toward a catastrophical situation. But when Hani talked about it being really unclear, which is a major problem, that it's unclear really what the U.S. intends to do. But first of all, we see that Trump has stated that Iran was close to obtaining a nuclear weapon. But that resonates with member Colin Powell's erroneous speech before the UN about Iraq's capability of having weapons of mass destruction. And then he says, well, it's really regime change. So the unclarity, the lack of clarity of the US position really leads me to believe that what the U.S. is all about is really doing Israel's bidding, and Israel all along has advocated for a regime change, trying to convince, and Netanyahu is desperate in trying to convince its constituents to reelect him, because it shows now that he is a minority. In that is to say, he have a minority of votes in the Knesset. So the next election coming up in October, he really is counting now that his stance on Iran, that Iran is the biggest threat to Israeli security, will come to the fore and mobilize votes for him. So I think this is his big, I think, reason behind the Iranian struggle, more than really the real threat, the Iranian conflict, the threat to Israel. He's using it really as a power source for his political longevity. Now, what are the unintended consequences, though, of this conflict? Well, first of all, if we talk about a regime change, this is
a purely military, we think probably a pure military-led regime change, analogous to George W. Bush's administration's intent to going to war on Iraq. He said would require it would require a ground invasion, which the U.S. really has no appetite for. Now, the killing of Khamenei created a power vacuum for sure. But what we can see, though, Mike, is that the outcome will probably be a change in dictatorship, or at least the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps will take over, which is in control right now. And so if we talk about the new possibility of a new dictator, then we talk about the supreme leader's son, Mojtaba Khamenei, the son of the Iran's late Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, has emerged as a leading contender. Now, he clearly follows his father's dictatorial approach and is very close to the powerful Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps that, as we know, was very repressive in the last protest against Iran. And now, the one thing that hasn't been suggested yet is the introduction of Hezbollah into this. Hezbollah is in a very precarious position right now and could have held back and said, well, we'll see how things go. But for right now, the Lebanese government is against the Hezbollah intervention and went ahead anyway and started bombing Israel. So we have the intense bombing by Hezbollah against Israel and the response and many victims of it. So we see Hezbollah ultimately prioritizes its ideological loyalty to Iran, and but the risk is bringing Lebanon into a wider regional war. And then finally, with the Arab GCC states. Now, this is the Gulf Cooperation Council states, as you clearly covered it, Mike. We don't have to reinvent the wheel here, with these states actually being bombed because of their cooperation with the United States. It has bases, and there have been many victims of this. We see also, as opposed to the 12-day war, the previous 12-day war with Iran really is taking off its gloves and going all out. And we see now many victims of the Iranian attacks. But dragging the whole area into a war is really what these countries don't want. And Qatar, however, was trying to hand a fig leaf to Iran and work out some diplomatic solution, has said it's demanded now immediately halt to the strikes by Iran on Qatar. So now we have a kind of a diplomatic pushback. And you've talked about Europe, of course. And we already talked about the French involvement, and the French have decided to kind of pull back a bit, whereas Spain, as a real contributor to this, to the U.S. and the Israeli war efforts, it simply announced it will join the fray, sending anti-missile and anti-drone systems to Cyprus, whereas Spain completely has refused to join. Germany, however, has decided to welcome the U.S. goals. So we see a complete difference, an extremely different position between Spain and Germany with respect to involving in its approach. And finally, Mike, and we can go on from there, we see now that there's a possible Kurdish ground offensive, and that's in northern Iran. Launched a ground offensive in northern Iran against the Islamic government, and the possibility of Iraqi Kurds getting involved at the request of the U.S. So we see this possibility, very dangerous possibility, of pulling the Middle East into a long-term conflict, one country after another. And then we see China's foreign minister calling for immediate cessation. So we're not sure what China's position is going to be. And then the Strait of Hormuz, which you have referred to already, being closed, virtually closed, which enters, it covers about 1/5 of the world's traffic with respect to petroleum, is a serious issue. So in conclusion, the history is full of greater powers attacking, whether it be the United States and Vietnam, attacking other lesser powers, Soviet Union, Afghanistan, and so forth. And they almost never lead to the sort of victory that's intended. So we should keep in mind that international law is almost dead, that we've referred to already. Only within the last few years have we witnessed the Iranian conflict, the horrors of the genocide in Gaza, and self-declared bastions of the rule of law, such as Germany, Britain, France, and the U.S., approving what's happened in Gaza, and then criticizing Russia's violation of international law in the Ukraine as total hypocritical. So historians may remember this war with Iran as a major turning point in the political history of the world. But this time, however, the imperial ambitions that pretty much are laying bare what Trump is wanting, and however the United States believes what it's trying to do to stop, have a regime change and regime change and evolve into a peaceful situation, is dragging the region, unfortunately, into a already chronically torn by war and throwing it into chaos.
Basil, I just want to talk about your observations. We have this shock and awe Mark II all over again. America and Israel go in hell for leather. They've gone in, but they haven't yet worked out where to go from there. As an observer, would you probably say that that is a bit of a worry if you don't know where you're going to go once you go in? Because you've got to have a start, middle, and end. That's whether you get there, that's another thing, but at least have a plan. And I would probably say that's because the news anchor come advisor whispering things of sweet nothing in the ears of Donald Trump and talking about all things war, Hegseth. I mean, he probably doesn't know that, when you start a war, you need to finish it. So they're all going in hell for leather. Bombs are dropping and Iran's firing missiles off and doing all sorts of things. I've got two questions for you. We had last night Major Fred Galvin, retired Major Fred Galvin on, and he's done hundreds of missions in the Middle East, and he's a very decorated soldier. And I brought it up that very point, and then I happened to mention that there are rumblings that they're going to run out of munitions, which is been circulating on legacy media also. Do they have enough bombs? And he sort of smiled and said, "Don't believe that," which leads me to the question: what are we hearing? When to me this seems like a perfect information operation on behalf of Israel and the US and maybe some of its allies that have been dragged into it. Do you think this information operation, or just telling lies and patting each other on the back, which could quite possibly be a lie, do you think that will hold much water when the world it just basically swallows itself, because it's about to, and it's going through now, a all-out economic disaster, and all borders will be worth nothing. You'll have industries, countries, major corporations, people will be suffering beyond all belief because they have no oil. They can't get the fertilizer. They can't get stuff delivered. We have airlines such as Emirates that are, I think they're losing or Dubai is losing $1 million a minute or something, $1.5 million a minute. Do you think all this spin that they're putting on this big, beautiful war, we're going to chop everybody's heads off and get rid of all the leaders until there are none left? Do you think that will hold any water? And do you think the world gives a rat's about what happens to all that spin if they start suffering as we are now?
Well, it's not to unpack there, Mike. The United States thought that if they assassinated Khamenei, that there would be some sort of popular uprising in the streets of Tehran to overthrow the rest of what's always referred to as the regime. That's the word used by Western politicians and media to describe governments they don't like. They're regimes. Other people are simply governments, of course. But anyway, that hasn't happened. There's no popular uprising. Quite the opposite. People are demonstrating in the towns and cities of Iran in support of their leadership. And the martyring of Khamenei has completely backfired. If anything, it has brought together national unity in opposition to these to the illegal wars. I think the Gulf states, who are feeling the economic repercussions, people paying $250,000 to get out of Dubai, and the tourist industry, which Sheikh Mohammed has spent 25 plus years carefully building up the image of Dubai as a safe haven for the super rich and a playground for millionaires. That's destroyed, and it may never recover. I have a friend who's involved in the motorsports industry over there, and she's cancelled a trip and has no intention of returning. She was a regular visitor. So the UAE and other countries have backed the wrong horse. They thought that the United States was going to protect them when they allowed the United States to put all these military bases and advanced radar warning systems on their territory. It turns out the US wasn't remotely interested in protecting them. It was only been interested in protecting Israel. So the economic impact of this has yet to be seen. I hope it isn't too great. Obviously, we all want hostilities to come to an end as soon as possible, but there is no clear direction from the United States. The pretense of spreading democracy or human rights, that's all been laid bare as a total lie. And the language coming out of the now Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, is all about raining death and destruction on the people of Iran. And Netanyahu himself has once again invoked Amalek, the biblical reference to peoples who must be completely eliminated down to the women and children. So this is a much, much graver situation than last June, both economically and for the wider region, with, as I say, the Gulf states likely to be the first to get on to Trump and say, hang on a minute, this is turned into a complete disaster for us. What are you going to do about it? It's time it stopped. It's got to stop now before our reputations and our economies are completely destroyed.
And they are, Basil. They are. I can see even in Australia, here's something a bit closer to home for the US. They need fertiliser because they're about to use fertiliser on their crops. Don't get the fertiliser, you have a very, very poor crop. And you would, and I go back to what I said. They haven't worked out where they're going to go after they do the initial attack. You can't keep dropping bombs because you've got to go somewhere. You can't keep doing that.
Well, they're going to run out of ammunition as well. This is the thing. It looks like the Americans and Israelis have already run out of the intercept missiles used to shoot down the Iranian drones and ballistic missiles. And the early warning systems have been destroyed. In the early days of the war, Iran was apparently sending over its out-of-date ordnance, bits of scrap metal is how they were described, and has kept its new hypersonic, ultra-high powerful, indigenously produced munitions for now. Now, there's a huge censorship regime in Israel. You don't see reporters on the ground in Tel Aviv talking about the destruction because it's bad for morale. But from what we can see on social media, it looks as if Tel Aviv has been quite badly hit. Last year, of course, once that started happening, Israelis turned around and said, hang on a minute, we're supposed to be able to bomb everybody else, but they're not supposed to bomb us. We don't like this. So it all stopped. But this time, I don't think the Iranians are going to stop unless, they're able to sue for peace on favourable terms to them. Let's remember that this whole smokescreen of Iran's nuclear program was just that, the smokescreen. What the Israeli front of the American administration, Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, the deception that they hid behind was the fact that the Israelis didn't want Iran to be able to defend itself with hypersonic missiles of the conventional kind in any way, shape or form. Israeli politicians were saying that in the weeks coming up to the war, that it was unacceptable for Iran to possess hypersonic ballistic missiles that it could use in self-defense, hence the preemptive strike.
Hani, can I ask you, do you think there'll be a realignment of America's relationships with its Arab partners, and what will be the outcome of this? We probably need to put your microphone on.
Yes, sorry. I think for the Americans, I mean, historically, let's look at it this way. Their primary interest is to protect Israel, regardless of the interest of the Arab nations. That's been clear for the past 50, 60, even 70 years. So even though that the Saudis, the Emiratis, and the Qataris and the Kuwaitis are, virtually American allies, but the Americans showed no interest of protecting these countries on the expense of Israel. So their primary interest now is to protect Israel, no matter what. Nevertheless, as the title of your show said, it's Pandora's box. It has been opened, and now, as I said earlier, Iran is not Afghanistan, is not Iraq, is not even Libya. What we saw is that after the attack on Iran, even the ones who were opposing the government of Iran, now they are standing with their government, because they're saying, "Hang on, this is our problem, protesting against the government, but we will not allow a foreign country to invade us." So actually, it backlashed what the Americans were hoping for, to have an uprising against the Iranian government. Now, what will happen next? We don't know, but it's definitely Iran, as Basil said, they will not stop like last year until there is a clear roadmap on what could happen next. And in Iran, at the moment, they've got nothing to lose, because they know if they're having this sentiment of, if we're going to go down, we're going to take everybody with us. So I hope not, but that's what is happening at the moment.
Frank, can I ask you what your views are on Iran's relations with its regional partners? I would probably guess that it wouldn't be all that great at the moment. Can they repair it? As Hani said, nothing to lose. So therefore, they just fire missiles at not randomly, but they fire missiles at selected targets they wouldn't normally fire a missile at. So can Iran build its relationship with its neighbours again, and will the neighbours actually accept that and want that? And by the way, part two of that one, what happens to America? Because if they build a good relationship with Iran, and Iran has this great distaste for the Americans, I would imagine that it's either Iran or the US. And if you see how patriotic or how great a team player they are with the US, and not defending and not doing a whole lot to help the other Arab states, you would probably think that they will give the US a bit of a nudge to move on. You probably need your microphone, Frank. That button says turn me on.
Yes, to kind of piggyback onto what Hani and Basil said, really. The Gulf states, actually, who have been seriously attacked, of course, and especially the American bases, American and Israeli interests indirectly there, it has clearly backfired in the way that the Gulf states feel. They felt originally that they will do this this will secure their security, so to speak, and their protection by the U.S. And they become fodder, actually frontline fodder, and they feel they are absorbing the casualties more than the United States is over this conflict. And so they're turning around with diplomacy to answer the main question there, Mike, is can this relationship be turned around? When the Gulf state realizes they become fodder for the U.S. and realize now we're sort of on our own here, and start negotiating back and returning back to their Middle East concentration and their relationship with each other, Bahrain, United Arab Emirates, and Qatar together, forming together, and that to make it clear to the United States that we're not going to be your boy, because the United States also, and this hasn't been brought up that much, realize that Bahrain, United Arab Emirates, and Qatar, at least Qatar and UAE, they have a military force, not just offensive. They've also said they're not going to put up with these attacks by Iran. In other words, there could be a response by their military to attack Iran. And this is, I think, what the United States is expecting, for them to be like the proxy for the U.S. military, which I think the door is now shut on that, because now that they realize the Gulf Cooperation Council with the 6 Gulf states realize that they really, the intention of the U.S. is for them to run fodder, to be the front line for the U.S. and absorb most of the losses. Now I think they're going to turn around maybe. And I think with diplomacy now to work this out amongst themselves, agreement with Bahrain, United Arab Emirates, Qatar, and maybe even Saudi Arabia there, and Oman as well, to build some type of diplomatic strength separate from the U.S. I think this can be worked out long term with Iran, actually, and realizing that they are on their own now. The United States is really has lied to everyone, and what Hani and Basel have alluded to, have said clearly that the priority is what the Gulf states don't want to hear. It's like throwing sacred water on a vampire when you hear that the United States clearly is privileging Israel over everyone, and so it's holy water on a vampire here. When the Gulf countries hear this. This is projecting them now, I think, working together through diplomacy. I think they can work this out with Iran and on a long-term basis.
While you're there, Frank, how's this affecting Gaza and, inverted commas, the supposed peace deal by President of all peace for mankind? Not.
Well, excellent question, and I'm sure Basil and Hani have something to say about it too. Israel loves distraction, and almost as soon as this conflict erupted with the last bombing, the 28th of February, all of a sudden these promises to bring in humanitarian aid have stopped. Bab Rafah, the Rafah gate there, which is supposedly now supposed to be open for humanitarian aid according to the ceasefire agreement, has now closed again. And so now that the world is focused on Iran, now that the world's focused on what the U.S. and Israel are doing and the Iranian response, now Israel is now no longer allowing much humanitarian aid going through. The Gazans know this, and so they're cringing, knowing, hey, we better position ourselves now to having much less food, water, and medication coming in. Our disastrous situation is becoming worse, and Israel, due to the distraction of the world, is focused on Iran again, is now attacking Gaza as well, even more so. So this ceasefire is kind of a joke. It's just a basic way to maintain control, and this wonderful distraction of the Iranian conflict that Israel loves to do, be a backdoor, snide way of weaseling in to attack Gaza. But just to add quickly, breaking news, the Global Samud Flotilla and the FFC are in Tunisia now organizing. We see we've got to get boats going to Gaza to respond to the fact that the humanitarian aid is not going through and people are still dying of starvation, lack of food, water, and medication. The Tunisian government was very supportive of us before when we were there on our way to Gaza, attacked leaders of the Global Summit Flotilla and FFC on the way to the port, bringing gifts to the port people who were in solidarity with us during the last mission. And now we have the Tunisian government now sending police to stop that march, to stop the Global Summit leaders from going to the port, to give gifts to the port people who were in solidarity with our last mission. And so where is that coming from? Why now is the Tunisian government opposing the Global Summit Flotilla? This is just throwing into the mix another confused issue, but I think very much consequential of what's happening in Iran.
Just to pick up on that point, Frank, do you think the Tunisian government is under pressure from Israel and the United States to stymie a much larger flotilla, isn't it? 140 ships or something due to head to Gaza this week.
Yeah, I believe this is behind it. And I think what it is might be a similar thing that happened years ago when there was FFC boats in Greece. Those boats were completely stopped. 9 big boats were stopped because Israel had paid off the Greek government. And I think this might be a payoff. It might be the pressure. But I believe the Israeli government is definitely involved. And it's all, and I think probably under the auspices of saying, look, we've got to be in solidarity. We have to be united against Iran. And this group, this group, the Global Summit Flotilla, is working with Hamas, which is clearly untrue. And Hamas, of course, is funded by Iran, and as Hezbollah is. It's all a conspiracy. We've got to be united against Iran, including united against the Global Summit Flotilla. I believe it's all part of it, Basil.
Basil, tell me what your thoughts are on, because the instability on the US side is quite alarming. And they even shoot their own planes down, apparently. Buy a new one. But Rubio and Hegseth are having a bit of a stoush. The rumours are that they're not all on the same page. With that, you sort of think
how can they be on the same page, Mike? They don't know what that page is. None of them. Right. They're making it up as they go along. So it's hardly surprising.
I'll quote someone. I'll just change one letter of it. This is becoming quite a cluster duck, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And what we're seeing in the United States is a real sea change in public opinion towards this war and towards Israel in general. For the first time, the leading Democratic candidate for the presidency in 2 years' time, Gavin Newsom, attached the word apartheid to Israel. Now, that would have been unthinkable even 6 months ago. He's regarded very much as a mainstream centrist Democrat. The Democratic National Committee's own report into the 2024 Kamala Harris election fiasco produced findings stating very clearly that the Democrat administration's support for the genocide in Gaza was a major contributing factor to the loss of the 2024 presidential campaign. That, of course, has been covered up. Meanwhile, on the right, the likes of Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens are doing an awful lot of noticing. Well, you can't really help but notice now that when Rubio himself, although he walked it back, of course, 24 hours later, when he was accused, bizarrely, Israel's best prized poodle, Rubio, was accused of anti-Semitism for saying that Israel had dragged America into the war because apparently that's an ancient trope or something. But amidst all this nonsense, Americans are waking up to the fact that their country's been completely hijacked and held to ransom by the Israelis to fund endless war after endless war. It isn't in America's interests. It isn't in the real interests of the American Jewish community, and it certainly isn't in the world's best interests.
And can I just add also, Mike, just quickly, 43%, they did a poll of Americans oppose the Israeli-U.S. attack on Iran. And then we just saw, we haven't mentioned it yet, But the Senate and the U.S. House of Representatives voted, the U.S. Senate and the U.S. House of Representatives voted down a war powers resolution that would require the president to withdraw these military efforts until approved by Congress.
Yeah, interesting. Basil, I was just thinking the domestic pressures on Trump at the moment, a bit of a wave of support. But as Frank mentioned, latest survey says, what was it, 43% want it stopped. So, and I think about a week ago it was way less than that. So it is actually gathering steam and momentum. What happens to Trump when they say enough's enough? You've done enough damage to the rest of the world, and you should have a plan when you attack a country. You need to know how you're going to finish it.
Well, Trump is still being propped up by American media and to a large degree by absolutely supine Western leaders who seem to be warming to the idea of this illegal war, having initially been skeptical. The Spanish are to be applauded for their steadfastness. But Trump said earlier this week, in response to the Spanish Prime Minister Sanchez saying that they would not allow the United States to use the joint bases that they have, that he would do so anyway if he chose to do so. He would completely disregard the wishes of the Spanish government, which then could lead to a situation where Spain was actually in direct conflict with the United States. So as for Trump, well, a lot of question marks about his health, about his sanity, about why he's doing this. Is this just to distract from the Epstein files? I think that's a bit simplistic, but I've seen on social media in the last 24 hours people saying that, he did very legal things, shall we say. Let's just leave it at that. I don't want to... he's a rather litigious individual and likely to sue anybody who makes any sort of claim, as we know. But put it this way, 50 years ago, he would be out of power by now, long ago. In the Nixon era, Watergate was a minor dispute in a cheese shop compared to what Trump has got up to. But standards in public life are now so low that this crazed buffoon, who fooled a lot of people, I might add, into thinking that he genuinely was a man of peace. He talked about peace and prosperity, new era of peace and prosperity. Turned out to be a total, complete and utter fraud, as well as being extremely weak. And the only golden age there's going to be, if there is one, is the 1,000-year rule of Christ after his second coming, when the mushroom cloud appears over Jerusalem, because he's in the grip of this bizarre millennial theology that's one of the drivers of this war, believe it or not, if you listen to Hegseth.
Hanny, can I get your views? Just imagine you're in Iran and you hear some sort of message coming through: lay down your weapons, surrender, and you'll have total immunity. Otherwise, you face certain death. What would the reaction be? And tell me, because Donald wants them all to lay down their weapons and surrender, 100% immunity, but you can trust him also, by the way. We'll meet in that building. Oops, blew that one up too. So if you're looking at the wishes of the US wanting them to lay down their weapons and surrender, that's not going to happen, is it? I mean, could you imagine
No.
the Royal Guard and one of the soldiers says, "Oh, that's a good idea." It's not going to be around. So how do we get around that? I mean, truly, Donald Trump's forte is not international diplomacy.
No, that's not going to happen. I mean, the Israelis and the Americans, they were hoping for that, and they were hoping that these indiscriminate bombings will just like that will change the regime by people being going into the street for uprising. But it did not. Actually, as I said earlier, a lot of the Iranians now who were opposing the government are now supporting the government because they don't want to see their country being bombed. And regarding the Revolutionary Guard, it's absolutely out of the question that they will lay their arms, because they know the minute that they do, they will not be be granted amnesty from the Israelis and the American government, because they know the history of the Americans and the Israelis. They never fulfilled their promises. A lot of the people, including me, in the Middle East, we would never trust the American administration, whether Democrats or Republicans. They are the same, and also, and of course, the Israelis. So the thought that the Iranian government would surrender is out of the question, given the fact that they are in a situation now of life and death. It's either they go into negotiations with the Americans and stop the war, or they will go down with everybody else in the region. And let's hope not.
And also, if they have to put the troops on the ground because there's no more Kurds left, but we'll sacrifice them. Oh, who else can we get to volunteer to save the world? But when they put their troops on the ground, honey, there's going to be it takes a different. The beast becomes a different beast, doesn't it? And all of a sudden, I mean, if you look at look at Afghanistan, that will just pale into insignificance compared to the compared to the turmoil that they will face on the ground in Iran.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it will be like a suicide mission for the American army if they are going on the ground. As I said earlier, it's not Afghanistan. This is Iran. They have sophisticated weapons. They have strong military presence in the whole country. It's not like Afghanistan or Iraq with militias there, where they have very simple weapons. No, Iran has sophisticated weapons. They have strong army, one of the strongest in the Middle East. So if the American troops would go on the ground, it's a suicide mission, and that will put even more pressure from the American society to put pressure on the American government to stop this war. Already, I mean, as Frank and Basil said, that a lot of people in the U.S. are opposing this war, and they know, even people like Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens, who were a few years ago they were pro-Israel, American government policies. Now they are saying, it's like, this is not our war. Why are we doing this? Why are we paying trillions of dollars to countries like Israel, while we have our own problems inside the US, such as homelessness, lack of healthcare, lack of free education, while countries like Israel, who are depending on the American money, they provide these services for free for their own citizens. So the general perception in the American society has shifted in the last couple of years since the Gaza war. So this will put more pressure, especially now that the Americans are shouting and screaming that this is not our war, enough is enough. So, and especially that now the oil and gas prices skyrocketed, and that will put pressure. Already, the European Union is in a situation where they don't want this war, yet they have agreements with the US. so to fulfill because of the NATO. So it's a very delicate situation at the moment, and in the next few days or maybe a couple of weeks, will a lot of the things will be much clearer.
Yeah, I think unless they get unless someone surrenders, I don't think it's going to be the US and Israel, and I really can't see Iran surrendering at the moment either. This thing can just move on and continue on, and the damage it's doing to the rest of the world. Some countries won't come back. Frank, what do you think about if this thing continues for the next? I mean, it was going to be 4 weeks, 5 weeks. If there are troops on the ground, it means that the airstrike just did that. It was an airstrike, not going to win the war. It can go on for months, if not a year or longer. Tell me, what do you think will happen to the relationship the US has with the entire world? And second part to this, what happens to Bibi? Does he head back to Florida to be with his son, or does he head towards certain annihilation for himself? Would that be an appropriate or inappropriate thing to say? Baz, Frank, you need to turn the microphone on again.
But appropriate thing to say, Mike, and making a mistake with all this hubris. Hubris is the future of what the U.S. does and Israel. If it continues with this strong hubris, for instance, Netanyahu, he thinks he can now go anywhere in the world. He'll make a mistake maybe and fly over a country that decides to force the plane down and say, no, we're going to comply with that arrest warrant and send you to The Hague to stand for trial for war crimes before the International Criminal Court. But the hubris, I think, is what's going to happen, though. Right now, Trump and Netanyahu are on a wave of confidence, and Trump has this childish notion. He's got the Superman cape on, like the U.S. was when they invaded Iraq, thinking we are going to Iraq, we're getting rid of Saddam Hussein, we're going to be greeted like heroes. On a long-term basis, we're going to change Iraq into an enterprise system, a free enterprise system. People will have jobs, and then just like in Japan after World War II, reconstruction, and they'll be our friends, and we'll go right off into the sunset. And so then, following through that Hani said about Trump saying, look, laying down arms, we're going to be your savior after that. You can trust us. It's a very naive approach. On a long-term basis, we're going to see that the United States even more so cannot be trusted. We'll see what happened in the past when their promises were made. For instance, the Kurds in northern Iraq during that struggle with Iraq were our allies and were attacking Saddam Hussein. And then after the United States invaded Iraq, the Kurds in northern Iraq were not protected. Saddam Hussein flew over and annihilated thousands and destroyed a lot of territory until finally they were stopped, knowing full well that, and on a long-term basis, as you alluded to, Mike, people are realizing, are now learning a bit about history, that you cannot trust the Americans, and it's really going to spiral the U.S. Into a dead-end zone where it loses credibility and power, because we see the empire, and behind it all, we see the philosophical issues with that you cannot trust it. This United States was supposed to be based upon freedom, is completely eroding, and then institutional erosion, and finally the end of this empire. I think it's going to be coming to an end and bringing down the U.S. and Israel with it.
While you're there, Frank, what will happen to the people in Lebanon who have been displaced by Israel and Hezbollah? Where do they go?
Absolutely, and I can definitely talk about that because I was in Beirut. I was in Shabra Shatila refugee camps, where a lot of people are there due to the Israeli conflict, and are immigrants there and refugees and so forth. Where are they going to go um, they're going to still be in limbo because Israel will not be open to them to return. And so they're stuck in these refugee camps, which are pretty much abandoned by the Lebanese government. At night, for instance, rats take over and there's crimes there and people have no work. And the Lebanese government is not helping especially the refugees from Syria and Palestine. So I think, unfortunately, their situation is going to be worse. They're not going to be able to go anywhere. And they're stuck in this quagmire of refugee camps that are just economically depraved.
Basil, would you like to add to that?
Well, just Israel has now normalized war crimes. Just yesterday, it issued this order for 500,000 people to leave their homes in the southern suburbs of Beirut so that they can bomb them to smithereens. And yet this doesn't even register on the corporate media in the West. It's a war crime. So the whole thing is just absolutely off the charts with the evil that is being done. Quite frankly, we've got to use the right words for this. The sooner it comes to an end, the better. But the only way it's going to come to an end is if the American Zionist alliance suffers a really bloody nose, to the extent that they have to stop. Because I think from where we are at the moment, the Iranians are going to keep going right down to the last missile.
And our final question, because we've gone way over the time, but sorry about that. Hardy, as a former humanitarian worker, this is unfolding and it's going to become due to the hand played by the US and Israel. A person who's had so much experience in this area, give us an idea what it will look like if this continues. The displacement, the murder, the suffering, the starvation, and the list just goes on.
Well, Iran is such a large, huge country. So probably, again, this is just me speculating. If the bombing continues, there will be an internal displacement in the first place. If things continue, if, let's say, the American troops go on the ground, then probably, yes, there will be a lot of the humanitarian crisis will be big in Iran, and then there will be refugees to neighboring countries like Azerbaijan and Turkey and so on. But Turkey already now, according to some resources, that they are trying to prepare themselves to host Iranians, but so far nothing happened. Again, Iran, as mentioned now, is that they will fight till the last drop, till the last missile. They will not allow and they will not allow it as much as they could. And it is the indicators now that the Israelis did not expect this, like as Frank said, like they are used to bomb countries, but they are not expecting to be bombed. And now I've seen videos of people, even though that there is a lot of they are trying not to show this on the news in Israel, but a lot of bloggers, they are posting on social media videos of Tel Aviv being bombed in several places. Now that will put pressure on the Israeli government by the Israeli people, because they're not used to such circumstances. So they will put pressure on the government to stop this war. Now, I don't know if Netanyahu would listen, because he needs distraction, because he's already been charged with corruption. He's been charged with war crimes. So he needs that distraction. But let's not forget that this war is affecting the whole world economically, and if it goes on for a longer time, I believe that the whole world economic will be affected, if not being collapsed.
Before we get into the where people can contact you, and I think Basil mentioned before about the motor racing. We have in Melbourne the F1 this weekend. Of course, Emirates were the major sponsor, and they were going to transport planes and all sorts of things over here. Anyway, we have at the moment we have a semblance of a Grand Prix. Basil, for your information, I'll come back to you in a second. We are now using shopping trolleys from a supermarket because they were already here. So should be one hell of an event. But it's true. You're right, Hani. It's just creating an abysmal scene for the rest of the world. And if they don't stop, and I cannot see for all the money in China why Iran will surrender. They're not going to do it. So it goes on, and then we have the boots on the ground, and it will go on. And heaven help anyone who relies on oil, which we all do. Hani, if somebody wants to find out more about you, how do they do that?
Well, they can reach me on either on Facebook or by email. I'm available there. So if they want to reach, they just give them my email, and they can contact me.
Fantastic. Frank, if somebody wants to, I should know this, I could do this probably with my eyes shut, but I won't. I'll let you do it. How do they contact you?
Well, they my book Love and Terror in the Middle East, 5th edition. Just put that in, Love and Terror, and then Palestine, Frank Romano. I'm also on Facebook and Instagram, and you'll find me there. And hopefully, we can continue this discussion together. Thank you, Mike. Thanks, Basil. Thanks, Hani, for everything.
And
Yes,
Basil Valentine, the expert on all horses, all thing horses, and the big one, I think in a week's time, Baz. How do they contact you, and do you have any tips?
Well, yeah, lots. There's 28 races next week at the Cheltenham Festival, Mike. But
Well, you'll be busy.
I'm on again in a few hours' time on UK Column News, 1 p.m. UK time. That's 8 a.m. Eastern. And on the Sunday Wire on Sunday at 6 p.m. UK time. The programme starts at 5 p.m., which is 12 noon Eastern.
And just Sunday Why, by the way, for those not familiar with it, would be one of the most excellent shows you could watch. We have Ruckus and yourself, along with Patrick and Hesh.
Patrick Henningsen,
And what's the website? The website for it. So they can watch it?
21stcenturywire.com.
Fantastic. And all very nice people, not as nice as you. And you'll be even nicer if you give me some correct tips for the horses. Gentlemen,
Happy to do so.
thank you very much. Have a great weekend. We're about to start ours, and I can hear the cork coming out of the bottle of scotch as I talk. Well, I can't really, but I'm imagining it. Thank you very much for your company. Thank you to our audience. Thank you so much. You might see our numbers on X and YouTube and stuff. I don't believe that at all. It's incredible. I mean, sometimes we might have one, but it's not the exact numbers. We have many, 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 many more, which we'll talk about some other time. Have a great weekend. Drive carefully. Again, also sorry that England lost to the Indians in the semi-final in the World Cup.
These things happen.
And
They got off an amazing start. The guy scored 89 on 40 balls. The opener, anyway.
They did, but then anyway, it went south. But we can't talk. Australia can't talk. We got beaten by everybody. That's it. Have a great weekend. This is The Protagonists on The World Today.